comes a new challenger!
I've returned.
What is going on, you guys? Theo here with the big review. Before we get into today's topic, which is going to be Shane in the big review, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe as we climb the ladder to 500 subs. Now let's get into the video. Alright, you guys, so here we are, and here is Shane, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at a few things with her kit before, obviously, we get into the review and kind of break it down, let you guys know kind of what's going on under the hood. So, I know a lot of people are curious about that as it pertains to Shane. So, let's go ahead and take a look first at her leadership skill, which is kind of a standard 7 Knights leadership skill. It's going to increase green element fighters' attack by 55%. And that is a very strong leadership skill, obviously, just as all the 7 Knights are for their particular element, which makes her a extremely good leadership under characters like maybe a Gonitz, or maybe you're looking at, for instance, and I'll show you actually, Lady Geese is a very good option as well. So overall, she's very good. Obviously, she's going to buff the god himself, Orochi, as well. So there's quite a few different characters for the green element. Green has really come into its own the past year, and so a lot of these characters definitely benefit from that, making Shane by default very strong as a leader. So let's go ahead and take a look at her cores. So if you take a look at her cores here, she is going to have a very good 30% power charge rate increase. She's going to increase her damage by 18% on a critical hit. She's going to have plus 1050 attack increase. She's going to have skill enhanced blast, which is 6% blast skill attack damage increase. She has skill enhanced strike, which is 8% strike skill attack damage increase. She has critical rate, which is a plus 3.2% critical rate increase. And then you get into her exclusive cores. You have Crusader's level 3, which makes her immune to damage for 2 seconds and increases attack for 35% for 4 seconds when power is 3 or less. That has a cooldown of 20 seconds. And then 7 Knights increase attack by 20%, decreases damage received by 20% when HP is 50% or more. So that is the 7 Knights core. And then we move on to Ashen Blade Dancer, which is going to increase her damage dealt to target by 15% for 7 seconds upon landing Slashing Fiend, and she's going to decrease damage received by 25% and resets the cooldown of Soul Slayer with a cooldown of 20 seconds. So overall, taking a look at her kit, you can tell pretty quickly that she's a damage dealer. She is the glassiest of cannons, and so basically you are going to want to make sure with her the game is kind of being unpredictable, particularly in things like PvP and PvAI. So overall, Shane's cores are pretty good. Damage immunity is always nice, and she has a ton of increase to her damage. Name of the game with her is very simple, and she's very good at it. It's just dealing damage. So let's go ahead and move on to her skills. Talk about her S1 here. So her S1 is going to be a strike skill, and it's going to give her super armor for 3 seconds when using a skill, and she's going to decrease her damage received by 80% for 4 seconds, with a 70% chance to ignore the target's guard upon landing a successful attack. So you're going to notice throughout her kit here yet again, very slanted towards PvP and one-on-one scenarios, but a very good skill overall nonetheless, with a super armor and a decrease to damage received by 80%. Being that she has 2 sources of super armor and damage immunity, she has quite a bit of damage soak, so it's kind of tough to break through her defenses when everything's off cooldown, but if you do, you'll take her down pretty quick because she is very glassy. Moving on to her S2 is also a strike skill. It's going to have super armor for 3 seconds when using a skill, and stuns the enemy for 2 seconds when a successful skill, guard included, ends. So again, more super armor and then the stun, so the aforementioned second source of super armor there, and a stun is very nice, but again, one-on-one scenarios is where she excels, and it shows so much in this kit, it's crazy. So moving on to her increase to attack by 28% for 7 seconds on her S3, with the PvP exclusive of being able to disable strike active skills for 3 seconds whenever a successful skill, guard included, ends. Again, PvP focused. She is a PvP character. But yeah, so not much else to be said about that. I mean, it's a great skill for PvP, but for PvE, there's not much to talk about there. Overall, you'll notice that she is going to be a very good one-on-one bosser as well as a result of the way she is built. But she does struggle when there are more than one or two things going on at one time. We'll get into that here. But then if you take a look at her finishers, she does not have the fun effect on her finishers like the rest of the Seven Knights do. So let's go ahead and move on to her skills and take a look at the animations. Animation wise, I have no problem with Shane. I like her animations. My problem is in, you'll be able to see it when we get into mobbing especially, she splits mobs like crazy. These skills they have a mind of their own. They kind of do their own thing sometimes. They have kind of strange hitboxes and strange XY axis. It's very weird, especially with her S2. If you hit her S2 here, you'll see this is the one where she kind of flies around the screen. Well, sometimes she will actually move up and down and split the mob with that alone, even though they're grouped up, which is weird. And yeah, I don't know. Her skills are awesome, especially if she's one-on-one, but as far as that goes, that's as much as I can say about it. Her skills sometimes are not made for mobbing art, but this finisher here, let's talk about her card finisher real quick. So this finisher is very deceptive. It is not full screen. Keep that in mind. If you basically have to keep your opponent directly in front of you at all times in order for it to hit. They can actually walk behind it and out of range of it. So basically, if you're on one end of the screen and they're on the other and you're facing the wrong direction, it's not going to still hit them like a Dellins or something like that. It is going to require them to be in front of you or close enough to your back for it to connect. So they can actually kind of walk past it and out of frame and it not touch them. But keep that in mind, it can be deceptive, especially if you have kind of a split mob or something like that. But yeah, very interesting skills, very fun skills, very stylish skills, but her skills do leave a little bit to me to be desired. Yeah, so, but her overall kit is interesting. Now let's go ahead and take a look at her equipments, and we'll talk about that. So, as far as card sets go, I would say that I would recommend a Leah set, and that's kind of standard, I know, but I would recommend a Leah set there. The second set I would probably recommend at that point, if you didn't have Leah, would be an Akane set, that is not Akane, but an Akane set would be good. Overall, I would say that would be your second option, but really it depends on what you're trying to do. A Tekken set is okay on her, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I don't think that's really what she needs. I think she benefits more from just straight up attack increase. But yeah, so that's what I would kind of recommend with the cards. And then as far as options, that's all dependent as far as what's best in slot for whatever you're trying to do in PvE, obviously. So it really comes down to, what you're trying to accomplish. For me, I like these two option cards in general if a character can take advantage. So I use these quite a bit, but you can use pretty much any of the cooldown cards that you want. Even the Tekken option card is really good on her. But yeah, overall, just depends on what you're trying to accomplish in that department. And then as far as her stones, I have the Seven Knights attack increase stones on her, but obviously if you don't have those or don't have a complete set, you can go with the green attack type increase stones, the R stones. If you go with the gold ones, if you have those, if you've farmed a few and have them laying around and you have an off dot that you don't need for anybody, then you can go ahead and throw those on her. But her stones, you just want attack. So yeah, pretty much that is going to be Shane in a nutshell. Very good damage dealer, extremely glassy, and not necessarily made for all things PvE. But yeah, guys, so let's go ahead and get into the review. Enough of this. Let's talk about how Shane performs in mobbing. So, as I've touched on when talking about her skills in the breakdown, mobbing is not Shane's strong suit. She's going to struggle with splitting mobs mightily, and really it just comes down to the unpredictable nature of her skills. You might think that you know what's going to happen with some of these mobs when you throw a skill out there, but you really don't. And there's really no good way of being able to predict it. It's interesting because they kind of have a mind of their own sometimes, and sometimes they will completely mop up the mob, and then at other times they'll completely split the mob. And it's interesting. I think that it really comes down to a very sensitive and very narrow XY axis with these skills. It seems like, just by a hair, if you're off on one part of the mob, it'll split the whole thing, and it's interesting. And so, therefore, in things like RHD, she will sometimes struggle. It's also worth noting, though, in this regard, she does have interesting flank defenses. So sometimes when she throws out her skills, they will actually hit behind her and, go across the screen, which is kind of cool to watch happen in motion. But at the same time, it's unpredictable with the way she works sometimes, and I think it just comes down to, again, a sensitive XY axis with mobbing. I think that she just doesn't have very generous kind of hitboxes with that, and so therefore it's one of those situations where she does kind of suffer. And I will say that I'm taking her into tier 45 in this footage, and she's only Awaken level 30, as you can see, and she does do extremely well defending herself, so I'm not going to completely dock her, but at the same time, it is worth noting that she does struggle with the splits, and so you're going to have to pay attention to that. Her damage output's incredibly good. It may not look it in this clip or any of this footage from RHD because she's underleveled, but I was taking her into the tiers before tier 45, and she was one-tapping most things, but the problem is it would just be a situation where she would one-tap whatever she did hit, and then the rest of it would get split off. So yeah, maybe not ideal for mobbing overall. I think that if you're just wanting to use her as the leader for your green team for kind of just general RHD or general purposes, then yeah, obviously she'll be fine. It's just that do keep in mind she isn't ideal for it. And therefore, I'm not going to say that she's necessarily bad, but I don't think she's necessarily good at it either. This is one of those cases where just because you're able to take things down very quickly, can you do it in a way that is going to be kind of as reliable as other characters that I could be using instead of you? And I think the answer on that is no. I think that, she does struggle sometimes with grouping. And so, yeah, that is pretty much what I have to say about that. I don't think that there is a whole lot else in her kit that really needs to be spoken of in this regard. So the rating for Shane in mobbing is going to be a 3.5 out of 5. So let's go ahead and move on to bossing. And this topic is much different for her because she's much better at this. She's much more attuned and designed to be a character that is going to be kind of benefiting from a 1v1 scenario, being that she is a PvP character, and therefore that talent does translate over to her bossing. Now, biggest thing with her is you want to just corner, if say you're in the RHD like right here, you just want to corner the boss and just wail on them with a fantastic awakening rotation that she has. Now, with her awakening rotation, you can pretty much just soak whatever's coming at you because she has so many sources of super armor and damage immunity, and she's spamming her skills so quickly, on top of the fact that she has a stun in there, that it really can be kind of cheesy when you're kind of cornering these bosses. I will say though, again, this is where the kind of level difference for her in this footage takes effect. Her damage, had she been leveled up there, I mean, shoot, she already half took down this boss, and it's way above her. So her damage is pretty darn good, even in these clips, it being under-leveled. So that just gives you a good idea of how strong her damage output is. Again, her damage is not a problem. It's just the fact that, she doesn't like to have a bunch of kind of mob characters in front of her and things to shine. But whenever she is against these bosses, it's very strong the way she is able to perform. And she's very good at it. The problem is with bossing, and you're going to notice that in this footage, there's really not a whole lot of options to use her throughout the game. So think to yourself with this character, kind of without dots and without kind of the things that you would normally look for against, some of the Immortals and things of that nature. Is she really going to benefit you? in anything else outside of this. I have tried to use her in the guild raid and things like that, and it just doesn't matter. Like, she just doesn't do anything for you. So it becomes kind of a talking point with her as far as her versatility. And I talk about versatility a ton when I review things, because you should be able to, at this point with such a deep pool of characters, be able to prioritize characters that are going to be good for, you know, a multitude of things, not just one mode. And while, yes, she's very good at RHD bossing, and she's kind of average when it comes to mobbing, you know, looking at her kit, I just don't see where you would necessarily use her elsewhere. And that is kind of where she's at with things. If you were going to use her in other mob scenario, or other boss scenarios rather, you could probably, you know, use her as just a leader for, say, Orochi, the boss syndrome version, obviously, or Gonitz. But yeah, that's kind of where she's at with things. So overall, I think it does hurt her not to be as versatile as you would like for a bosser. So she is a 4 out of 5 because she's very strong at the ones she's good at, but it's very few and far between where you'd bring her. So let's go ahead and take a look at PvAI for Shane, and predictably, it's pretty good. Overall with Shane, the thing is her damage output is so insane and her speed is so crazy, and being that she has such unpredictable movement, and she kind of flashes right in front of characters and just kind of does her in and out kind of poke and then do a ton of damage and then dip out. She's very, very strong, and so therefore in PvAI she does excel, and she does extremely well. I mean, she melts characters with even the highest of defenses. I mean, look at that Rudy right there, just absolutely melted. So it's one of those things where, again, she is built for PvP, and as much as I hate to say that, you know, she just isn't really geared towards PvE. She isn't a character, and we knew this. She isn't a character that you're going to use as a, you know, #1 draft pick for a PvE team. But you take her into the things she's good at, like this, PvAI, and she excels. She does very, very well. She does great damage. Now, I will say, she's very glassy. If they get a hold of her or even hit her once, she's going to take a ton of damage from it. And so she has to be careful if things have damage immunity or armor up. You know, otherwise she could be in trouble if she gets caught. But that's why she has so many sources of super armor and damage immunity to kind of protect herself. So, you know, overall, I'm going to give her a 4 out of 5 here, because I just think there are plenty of other options that are better. But overall, I think this can be squarely put at a 3.75 out of 5. We'll get in the final thoughts and talk about why, but I do think that that is a fair score for her. And overall, I feel like I could have even gone a little bit lower. You know, it's really one of those things for her where she's really built for 1v1 combat, but has very limited versatility overall in PvE. So we all kind of knew that going into the 7 Knights collab. When we saw the breakdown of their skill sets, we knew that the Rudy and Shane banner was going to be your PvP-focused banner, and then obviously the Delans and Eileen banner was going to be more PvE-focused, and it definitely shows. At the end of the day with Shane, I think she is going to maintain a spot of relevancy just based solely on the fact that she is going to be a very good leader for some very good characters in the game. Green has, as I said earlier in the video, become a very strong color pool, but at the same time I have to wonder, outside of that, is she ever going to have any major relevancy? You know, you could probably take her into some of the element dungeons and get by with her there, and I have tried her a few times in pretty much every bossing scenario I can think of, outside of the ones that you would never even consider. But overall, she's going to be one of those characters that is going to struggle to maintain a kind of relevant nature in PvE. I don't necessarily think that at the end of the day she is bad at all. I think that it just more so comes down to she is never going to be a #1 kind of ideal pick for a slot on a team. You know, if I had to put her on a depth chart or a tier list, you know, I would not put her above characters such as Boss Syndrome Orochi, much less a Gonitz or any of the kind of top tier green mobbers or bossers. And honestly, even a Lady Geese for specific things. She has more versatility than even this character as far as when you would find her useful. So at the end of the day, Shane is just going to be a character that I would say you can get by with just awakening her to kind of a level 10. I don't know that I can, in my heart of hearts, recommend dumping a ton of memories into invitations to kind of awaken her all the way up. You know, her stats are amazing, obviously, and she is a extremely strong attacker. The thing is she's just not versatile enough for me to think that type of investment is warranted. You know, you're at the end of the day, for me personally, and you guys can be different, that's fine, everybody's different, but for me personally, I think that if you are going to seriously invest that much into a character, that you need to have a jack-of-all-trades kind of Swiss Army knife approach to that character, like a Delens, or even an Eileen, who is very versatile at this point. And I just don't think Shane hits those marks, and I don't think she's capable because she's just not built for it. So therefore, I think that building her for PvP, leaving her to that niche is just fine. I don't think you're missing out if you have her and you don't awaken her past that. But, you know, those are just my thoughts on it. I don't think she's bad whatsoever. I just think that there are better options for PvE that you can invest in. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Make sure you let me know in the comments section down below. I appreciate all of you. Make sure, if you haven't already done so, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.